Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on how to cultivate a meditation practice. Before I introduce our presenter for today, I'm just going to go over a quick few reminders during the webinar to please remember to mute your sound throughout the whole hour. If you are comfortable, feel free to turn on your video, and we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the hour for a Q&A session. So if you have a question that you would like to ask during the question and answer session, please feel free to drop that in the chat box. And your presenter today will be Armando Martinez. Armando is a school of psychology doctoral student at the University of Utah. And as a child, Armando was always introspective and curious about himself and the nature of reality. But his interest in formal meditation began during his undergraduate studies almost 15 years ago at Rutgers University, where during his first semester, he took a class called Religions of the Eastern World, taught by the renowned Hindu scholar, Dr. Edwin Bryant. After a brief hiatus, he rediscovered his passion after coming across the app Headspace, which coincided with his newfound hobby of long-distance running and new teaching career. Since then, he has sat on a 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat, continues to practice regularly, and is excited to share what he has learned along the path with you all today. So I'll turn it over to Armando.
Thank you so much, Annie, for that introduction. And I am so excited to do this. I've been waiting for pretty much all year, really. I was originally going to do this presentation last semester, but because of scheduling, we kind of moved it to this portion. Just before we get started, a few logistical things that I wanted to go over. I know if you've been in any of the webinars in the past, I want to kind of switch things up a little bit. So if you're comfortable sharing the video, by all means you can. I'm not going to be offended if you don't. And also, in accordance with mindfulness, in accordance with getting to know yourself, if you feel more comfortable going for a walk while you listen to this, lying down, closing your eyes, whatever it is that helps you focus and listen more, by all means, feel free to do that. The only thing that I do ask is if you have a question, definitely type it in the chat. I'm not going to be able to see it during the presentation, so I'll check it at the end. So as you're listening, if thoughts come up, just be mindful of them, note them, and then put it in the chat, and then I'll answer them at the end. Let me share my screen. Thumbs up if you could see that. Perfect. Okay, so we're ready to get started. Welcome again, and my name is Armando, like Annie said. Thank you for that introduction. The title of the presentation is How to Cultivate a Meditation Practice, and I was particularly careful with the words that I used, and I say cultivate because meditation is unlike any other activity, any other hobby that any of us have participated in. It's not something that you can do by sheer force, by sheer will. In fact, the less you try, the better it is. And that's why I use the word cultivate, because you want to make sure that you're setting up fertile grounds for the practice to take shape. You're not doing it, like I said, by sheer will. It's not something that you're putting into your schedule. It's a way for you to practice self-compassion and a way to really insert beneficial practices into your life that's going to really serve in so many different aspects of your life. So, and meditation practice is, it's kind of a misnomer, and I'm going to go into all the different types of meditation, but it's almost like saying how to do sports or how to play music. There's so many different kinds of meditation, and it's going to be extremely hard for me to go through all of them. Just to kind of ground ourselves, like Annie said, I am trained in the Vipassana in the Vipassana tradition. So what that is in layman's terms, what you think of as mindfulness, it's basically like mindfulness, but with a little bit of a kick, a little bit more into investigating the nature of reality and all that. And I'll go into the specifics as far as the different kinds of meditation practices. But I'm going to start out with this picture, and all of you that live in Utah are probably very familiar with this scene, Arches National Park. I visited there over the past summer, and coming from, as many of you know, I'm from New Jersey, the New York City area. We don't see skies like this, and so I was really struck by going to the night sky, seeing the night sky, and seeing the Milky Way, and seeing all the different stars for the first time. And for me, it really crystallized. It was a perfect metaphor for what meditation, true meditation, really is. It allows us to see our mind for what it is, to accept it for what it is. A lot of times we have thoughts and worries and stresses that act like clouds, that cover up the stars. You'll have the full moon really bright. That won't enable you to see the stars. Sometimes you need to go away from the noise, go away from the cities to be able to see the contents of your mind. And that's what meditation really allows us to do. And so think of that metaphor as we go through this, because that might touch on a few misconceptions that maybe a lot of people have as far as meditation goes. And so the structure of this presentation is, I actually outsourced a lot of questions through social media, through personal channels, because instead of taking a more didactic approach in this webinar, I wanted to meet the audience where they're at, because I think it's important. And I wish if my old boss, my old assistant principal would have heard this, the ability to differentiate for the students or the audience in this case. Maybe I'd still be a teacher, but I'm happy. I'm thankful to be here regardless. But I wanted to meet you all where you're at. So I think by outsourcing all these questions and facilitating an organic discussion, I think we're able to get a little bit more out of it. And this webinar is my gift to everybody in this lab, everyone who wanted to participate in this, because in meditation traditions, it's all about giving and how we can better our own lives and the lives of the people around us. So this is an integral part of my circle. So this is what I wanted to give, especially at the beginning of the semester, for everybody. A few things that meditation is not, and I'm going to go over a few of the misconceptions, like I said before. Meditation is not a magic bullet for all of your life's problems. And now I kind of add a caveat, because meditation can help you with a lot of life's problems, but a lot of people go into meditation with the thought of, this is going to fix everything in my life. That's not what it's about. It's about understanding who we are, understanding the nature of reality in some traditions, and it helps us become better people. But by no means is it a magic bullet. And I really like this picture, this illustration. And for those of you that do have your camera on that are going to be watching the presentation, I've just embedded a lot of lighthearted cartoons that kind of drive some of the points home. Meditation is similar to this picture, where a lot of times we're in the maze of our everyday lives, and we're not able to see where different stresses and worries really trip us up. What meditation allows us to do, it gives us an aerial view of everything, all the different landmines, if you will, that befall us, and myself included. I've been meditating for a very long time. I'm still constantly learning, and it's a process. One of the things that I always like to say is, the only measure of improvement in meditation, the only yardstick to go by, is equanimity. And you're going to hear me say that word a lot. And that's going to go into some of these other misconceptions. It's not a method strictly for relaxation or relieving anxiety. Equanimity is the only way to fly. You're not going to all of a sudden stop being worried, stop being anxious. A lot of times people go in with that mentality, but it's about controlling your reaction to any of the things that come across in our lives, is being able to, even if it's just have having the amount of time that that your reaction time to maybe something, maybe anger, maybe fear, just being able to calm those visceral reactions that you might have. That's what meditation really allows us to do. So it's not all of a sudden you meditate for 10 minutes and you're untouchable. Life doesn't work that way. There's going to be a lot of things that are presented with you. And I think the people that are around me, many of you have only known me for a few months. I think the people that have known me for much longer has seen the progress and the process, because 5 years ago, 10 years ago, potentially this presentation would be a mess. I'd be a little bit more erratic. Meditation allows us to just acknowledge these feelings, be able to sit with them, not react to them, and just live happier lives. It's not one size fits all. What I mean by that is we're going to talk about a bunch of different traditions and a bunch of different techniques for meditation. There is not one, there's not one right answer. And I said that I'm trained in the Vipassana tradition. Vipassana, we'll talk about the different techniques. Vipassana consists of many different aspects, whether it's loving kindness or metta, whether it's, more, breath work and focusing on the breath and that sort of awareness, body scanning. It encompasses all these techniques, which is one of the reasons why I like it. But by no means is it, oh, I only practice Vipassana, or, oh, I only practice Transcendental Meditation. It is beneficial to kind of take, you're your own master. You're going to be able to take different things that you like from different traditions. So that's what I mean by it's not one size fits all. A way to stop thoughts. And this is one of my favorite ones, because this was a misconception that I had earlier on, as late as 2 years ago, before the retreat that I went on. I thought that meditation is just, well, it's the cessation of thoughts. Thoughts stop. All of a sudden, I'm just one with the moment. I'm one with my breath. If you go into meditation like that, you're not going to have a good time. It's like that South Park episode. If you're pizzaing when you should be French frying with this skiing, you're not going to have a good time. Kudos to anyone who got that reference. But if you go in with that mentality, it's not going to work out well for you. I'm going to go over different states of awareness that might put things into perspective. I know it did for me. That'll help you and see kind of how your mind will transition between these 4 different states. But again, it's not gonna, all of a sudden your thoughts are not gonna stop. All about stillness and quiet. This is another one. This is a recent discovery. It can be equally beneficial to meditate when there's noise around, because how often in life are we going to be in a situation where we're going to be completely quiet, completely still? Almost never. What meditating while you're in a hectic space allows you to do, it's to be a little bit more flexible, be a little bit more unbothered by extraneous circumstances. After meditating, my cat's meowing for extra food bothers me a little bit less. I know that if I haven't meditated for a while, it might get on my nerves. But it allows us to, it's another stimuli that allows us to, it has us deal with another stimuli that then allows us to be a little bit more flexible in everyday life. And I'll talk about also visual stimuli a little bit later. About removing or quieting emotions, again, similar to thoughts, not going to happen. You're going to feel anger. You're going to feel anxious. It's all about being able to sit with it. That's the key. And meditation is not difficult. I know a lot of times, and this is the benefit of having someone like me from Jersey doing this presentation, is because I'm going to demystify it. I'm not going to put it on this on this mountain and make it this crazy experience. It is super simple, and it's very non-sectarian. It's very practical, with direct benefits. We're going to go into some of the questions and answers now that many people, and thank you for everyone that shared, that many people submitted. So the first question, and I kind of scale up as far as specific questions. So I'm going to start general, and I'm going to get a little bit more specific. So kind of like that inverted triangle that many of our lit teachers talked about. There are different types of meditation. Which one is the best to start out with? Should you try them all? How do you know which one is best for you? Excellent question to start it off. And there's so many different types. Again, like I said, you have Transcendental Meditation or mantra meditation, which is the focus on a particular, what a mantra is just a saying, it's a phrase that becomes your anchor. Instead of using the breath as your anchor, as thoughts come and go, what a mantra does, it just kind of centers you to focus on that one aspect. So those are Transcendental Meditation is essentially that. They just kind of, how do I put this nicely? It's become kind of a business where people pay a lot of money and then they give you a special mantra. I'm pretty agnostic as far as that goes because I know that there's going to be benefits to that, but hey, some people got to make a living. Mindfulness meditation, like I said, which is probably what many of you, having been on Headspace for many, many years, many, many sessions, that's going to be what most people are familiar with. Using the breath, of course, but also going through sensations in your body, usually from head to toe, noting thoughts as they come up, just being aware of the present moment, trying to be there. That's what we all think of when we think of meditation. What Vipassana is, it's very similar to that. However, it takes a lot of the more existential questions and it takes it a step further. So it asks you, so as you're scanning the body, what does this mean? What is this supposed to, what does this tell you about yourself? What do all these different sensations tell you about yourself? And that's where that's where we start getting into the concepts of impermanence, that everything's changing. And so it uses the body sensations almost as a presupposition, almost as kind of like support for this main thesis of impermanence. And that I could go a little bit more, but it's also important that and that's something that I'm learning from Derek and the therapy case. It's important for you also to walk the path. So I can't spoon feed all the answers. I think it's important that the fruits that you get from the practice. Chakra meditation, which might be a little bit more pertinent if I was to do this webinar in Sedona. But nonetheless, it's pretty important to talk about because it does have basis in Hindu traditions. Zen tradition, for those of you that are familiar with Zen, it's focusing usually on kind of like a riddle. It's called a koan. And you just kind of sit with it. Usually they have to do with the nature of reality. Loving kindness / metta, like I said before, it's another aspect that's kind of talked about in Headspace, where you are visualizing and sending good wishes to somebody else, whether it's someone that you are very close with, someone that you might have some trouble with, someone that you're neutral with. There's just so many. But what I'm trying to say with this, and there's a bunch of techniques as well as focused attention, body scanning, noting, which I've mentioned before, visualization, loving kindness. The important thing is Vipassana clicks for me. I think it's important when you're going into meditation to have an open mind, to explore. If something jumps out at you, if something's calling to you, investigate it. It's going to be similar to how it is when you're meditating and a thought comes out. If this is an alley that you're interested in pursuing, by all means go through it. Just because one technique works for me doesn't necessarily mean that it'll work for you. I think it's important that you explore, that you look at all these different options, almost like a menu, almost like, moving here and looking at all the different winter sports that there are available. I looked over here, I investigated here, I settled on cross-country skiing. It's a very personal thing. Like I mentioned before, I wanted to go over 4 types of awareness because I think this is going to maybe shed light into why I lean towards Vipassana, is because if you're focusing on a mantra or you're just focusing on the breath, if you're more anchor meditations, you're going to notice that, again, like I said before, you can't stop your thoughts. You're going to have a bad time. 4 types of awareness, and this was the director of mindfulness at UCLA, Diana Winston. She talks about 4 types of awareness, and learning about this really helped me as far as just noting when my mind, while I'm meditating, or even just everyday life, when my mind shifts through these things. Anchor awareness, which is what we think of when we're focused on one particular aspect. So when you're meditating, it's going to be on your breath or on a mantra or potentially sound, or something that your eyes are fixed on. Just think of when you're just focused on one thing. Investigative. I always like to use the analogy of your mind is kind of like solving a Rubik's Cube by itself. Usually when we have a problem or usually when we have something come up, our mind will go into kind of problem-solving mode. That's the best way to kind of wrap your head around investigative awareness. And your mind will just do that naturally. You might want to go back to your breath. You're there with your breath for 3 breaths, and all of a sudden it's gone again. And all of a sudden you're thinking about the problem. That is totally natural. That might mean that there's something that you need to solve within that problem. So being open and allowing, you're going to hear me saying that word a lot, allowing your mind to do what it does is an important aspect of meditation. Choiceless awareness. This is where all of a sudden you're just kind of, you might be with your breath for a little bit and you don't really have anything pressing going on. And all of a sudden you have a thought about what you had for lunch yesterday, what you did 2 weeks ago. And these thoughts just kind of float in and out and you're just kind of open and you're accepting of whatever comes. That's going to be choiceless awareness. And again, your mind will sometimes just go into that mode. Totally fine. Allow it to happen. Just when you notice, and all of a sudden you start following a thought, like a dog following a car, you just bring it back to that anchor because that's the practice. It's just following the thoughts, bringing it back. Following the thoughts, bringing it back. Like I said, very simple, and it has a lot of different repercussions in our life, all positive from what I've seen. And then open or natural awareness. This is going to be tough to explain, but it's going to be open or natural awareness is going to be kind of like when you're staring out and you're not really focused on anything, just kind of letting things wash over you. There's no real thoughts going on. That's going to be open and natural awareness. And again, sometimes our mind will go to that and you just feel this open-hearted feeling. Those are the 4 that she talks about. And in my experience, those are pretty spot on. And again, just allowing the mind to do what it does. That gives you a sense of, that might give you a direction that you might want to steer towards as far as different types of meditation go. Because again, it's a very personal choice, but I think it's important to have that background. And from here, you could kind of investigate on your own. What's the best way to start meditating? Similar to the previous question, to the answer to the previous question, there's no right or wrong way. I kind of investigated on my own for a while until, I discovered Headspace. Headspace was a great entryway for me. If that's something that works for you, by all means, continue it. If it's something that you don't have and then you want to have, you can reach out to me and I'll share different resources as far as Headspace goes. It is not my number 1 app, surprisingly, for meditation. There is another app that I don't know if enjoy is the word, but it really, I think, explains things in a more methodical way. Whereas Headspace, I understand it a little more now once I have more of a basis, which is interesting because It's kind of, it gives you a beginner look. It gives you all the cartoons that are really awesome. I do feel, as a former teacher and as a critical student, sometimes I like when things are explained very methodically, and which is one of the reasons why I liked going on retreat, because I mean, you're not talking for 10 days. You're just being explained the technique, and there's a lot of time for that technique to marinate. So for me, I really like the app called Waking Up. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. They have a paid version. If you want a free month to try it out, I could send you a bunch of. I used the free model, especially as a grad student. I don't have a lot of extra money to share. So again, if that's a resource that you're looking for. However, again, if you're being called to something, if you're being called to a particular way to start out meditating, there's no wrong answer there. How do you know if you're doing it right? Excellent question. Again, the yardstick that I look for as far as progress goes is equanimity. That's the only way to measure true progress. Being equanimous to the thoughts that are present, that present themselves to you, and not reacting to them, or just seeing that the reaction time lessens as time goes on. That's the only way that you know that you're doing it right, because as I'll talk about later with one of the questions that was asked of me, I've had some very blissful experiences while meditating. I've had some pretty transcendent experiences meditating. If I spent my time thinking that that is the pinnacle and that I want to reach that again, like you're pizzaing when you should be French frying, you're going to have a bad time. You're going to have a bad time. You can't be clinging onto these pinnacle experiences. You just have to accept the moment for what it is, accept your mind for how it presents itself, and that's gonna be what bears the fruit. So how do you know you're doing it right? Because if you're able to accept the moment as it is, accept the breath as it is, your thoughts, your mind, your body as they are in that moment, that's how you're doing it right. There's no other way to judge yourself. And by judging yourself in any other way, you're doing yourself a disservice. And again, meditation is a way to practice self-compassion. It's a way to be accepting of ourselves. So it's really important that you don't try to pigeonhole yourself into, oh, I should feel this way or this way. The way that you feel right now is totally fine. Another excellent question. And all these questions, again, super thankful for. They're all great questions, especially as we're on different levels not really levels, but as we're on different paths. It's been super helpful to see all these different questions. Aren't you running away from your problems by meditating? I see this asked quite often, because you think, well, I'm meditating for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes, however long. I'm not dealing with the problems that are happening outside of me. Where in fact, that's a misconception that I had early on in meditation. Meditation shows you the problems that you have, and it's just like, you can't avoid it. It's just, here are the problems in your life. Here are the things that you have to tackle. And now it's up to you to kind of do what you will with them. If you think that when I talked about blissful experiences, and I have, especially on retreat. Conversely, I've also had some pretty tough experiences, maybe the toughest that I've had in my life, especially on retreat. And you have to answer to yourself. And there's no bigger obstacle really than answering for the things that you've done and thought, and you are going to be your biggest critic. And all of a sudden you are looking at yourself in the mirror. Meditation is just that moment where it allows us to really look inside and being able to kind of wipe away some of the stuff that we have going on in there. So it's not running away from your problems, even though you might be away 10, 20 minutes. I might not be having that conversation with someone that needs to have a conversation with, or apologizing or whatever it is. meditation presents these problems very clearly. It's our job to remain equanimous to them, to not react to them as they come up, because a lot of times the habit pattern of the mind is something negative comes up in our mind, we push it away. We don't want to think about that. No. That's that again, pizzaing when you should be French frying. Meditation allows us to practice even when it's uncomfortable feelings or sensations, we have to sit with it. So meditation, if anything, helps us see the problems, like that maze picture that I showed before, helps us see a potential solution a little bit more clearly. And then after that 10-minute or 20-minute or hour session, whatever it is, if you feel like it's time to act and fix that problem, by all means. And that's something that, again, I'm continually working with. Sometimes, as many of you can probably attest to, I'll be aware of a problem and then I'll want to immediately act. This semester, part of my New Year's resolutions is not immediately acting. I'm aware of these things. And again, it's a learning process. You could be aware of these things and you might want to fix everything, but sometimes that's not in your power. So definitely not running away from it. If anything, it gives you with more tools and more weapons to be able to tackle all the problems that your life may present. Is meditation boring? Another great question. It certainly can be. There's been meditation sessions where there's not really much happening up there. Just really focusing on the breath. It happens. And that's totally okay, because again, it's our job to accept the moment, accept what it is that our bodies, the present moment is really presenting to us at that time. I kind of look at boring as, you know what? Nothing bad is really happening. There's no dark clouds blocking that starry sky. Just kind of be at peace. So as far as boring goes, a Netflix show might be a little bit more entertaining at times, but a Netflix show sometimes, especially if you're binging it, and I can attest, I've been binging plenty of shows these days, you might lose touch with what's going on inside, because a lot of times we're focusing on what's outside, but we're not being in tune with what's happening, the thoughts and all the sensations that are happening inside. Meditation allows us to have that two-way street. So definitely not boring. Do I need to sit cross-legged? Another excellent procedure. This is a little bit more procedural. Absolutely not. I mean, even on retreat where they tell you, you're sitting cross-legged certain times of the day, you can't even move. You can't move well, not that you can't. No one's going to come behind you and whack you over the head with a stick like in Kill Bill or something. But there's sometimes that you have to be sitting still. Even in retreat, for people that struggle to sit cross-legged, you could sit on a chair, totally acceptable, and be mindful of your feet as they touch the ground. Your hands, you could place them on your lap. That is one totally cool way to meditate on the chair. I know I've done it on my couch before. I usually sit cross-legged, but you could do it on your couch. You could do it on a chair. It doesn't have to be on a cushion on the floor. Sitting cross-legged, lotus position, whatever it is. Another way that I think can be really helpful to people starting out if cross-legged is really challenging for you. Feel free to lie down. And now it's tricky because lying down, you have the tendency to doze off. Two tricks that I like to do if I'm meditating lying down, and this is especially helpful if I've had either a long day at work or I've been on a run. The last thing I want to do is sit cross-legged if I'm really tired and I just kind of want to let my mind rest. Lie down and you fold your hands on your chest. Allows you to breathe, feel the breath a little bit more closely if you need that help, but have your thumbs touch. And the reason I say have your thumbs touch, because as you start to snooze, by being mindful of having your thumbs touch, you kind of snap back in. Another way is to kind of bend your knees, so that if you feel that your knees, it's kind of going to be another sign that you're starting to doze off. If your knees start tilting to one side or the other, that means that you're starting to fall asleep. You'll either jolt up. And sometimes in meditation, that might be a clue that maybe you do need a little bit more sleep, but feel free to lie down if you feel more comfortable meditating lying down. Is there a certain amount of time that we should be doing to maximize the benefits of meditation? Like I said, all these questions are great. This one in particular, I really like because, all these meditation apps, they'll have, 10-minute, 20-minute. When you go into a meal, when you go into, you want to eat something, there's no fixed amount of food that's going to satisfy your craving, if you will, or your hunger. Meditation is the same way. A 5-minute session for me, if that's what I feel can benefit me the most in this particular moment, a 5-minute meditation might be more beneficial than a much longer one. Conversely, sometimes a much longer meditation session might be more helpful than a shorter one. It really is up to you to calibrate and see what it is that your mind and your body needs. I know on retreat, especially on the last day that I was on retreat, I stayed a little bit extra time in the meditation center, in the meditation hall. Even after the gong went off, I stayed a little bit more because I just knew deep down inside that there was more to this session. So I just kind of stayed with it, and I just allowed for whatever happened to happen. So you are your own master. You're your own boss. 5-minute, 3-minute, 3-minute session, in between Zoom classes might be really helpful. So there's no set amount of time where the benefits of meditation really start manifesting themselves. How do you find the time to meditate? Well, it helps that I wake up very early, although I'm getting away from that a little bit this semester. But kind of like what this picture says, it might seem like, oh, how can I spend these 10 minutes? I have, and I have it right here. I'm looking at my agenda. I'm looking at all the things that I have to do. Sometimes that 10 minutes that you take for yourself allows you to get through the things through your day much easier. It's much easier to get through the things in your day just by giving yourself that 10 minutes, by allowing yourself those 10, 20, whatever it is, allowing yourself that time to really just collect yourself, have whatever needs to wash over you, and then you could tackle that agenda, or you could go for a walk if need be. But you'd be surprised, and that's been one of the biggest changes within myself, especially in the last year, 2 years, is I was a stickler to that routine, stickler to the agenda. And, I would try to insert meditation at some point. But if you just listen to yourself, you listen to what's going on, and you see that, this might be a good time to take 5 minutes, 10 minutes. There's no set time. Morning is nice, right before bed is nice, but whenever you feel the necessity, by all means, because that might give you more time to either do the things that you need to do, or give you a little bit more time to enjoy life and enjoy the things that you might be neglecting because you have other things going on. Is there intrinsically a religious/spiritual component to meditation? No. In a simple word, no. It helps, especially if you're a little bit more familiar with Eastern traditions. But the way that I like to talk about, spirituality, especially in the Eastern world, it's so foreign to us in the West, because when we think of religion, we think of, set of rules and dogmas. Not to say that that's a bad thing. That leads you to potentially being a better person by having a code of morals. But in the East, think of religion as more philosophy and an art of living. I really like that phrase, an art of living. Sometimes in some of the traditions, it can be a little bit, it can be dogmatic at times, similar to Western traditions as far as, having certain rituals or having certain practices, but at its core element, the practice of meditation is extremely secular, very non-sectarian. It's based on, as many of you know from mindfulness meditation, if you're familiar with it, it's based on just practical, it's just the teachings of the Buddha, we'll use the Buddha. They're very simple. It's very practical. He didn't say, oh, you need to go around my statue 3 times while praying. No. That's a man-made practice. Whereas the teachings really lend themselves to a more practical, almost scientific way of looking at it. And that's part of one of the reasons why I was really attracted to Vipassana, because it's very based on real world. Is it helpful to meditate in a group or have a teacher? Again, helpful, but not completely necessary. I do, even though, with COVID and everything, I would love to be a part of a group, but there's a bunch of teachers, and I know Leanne and I shared emails this past week. Tara Brock, Jack Kornfield, Joseph Goldstein. These are all great people to really listen and podcasts, read articles, get guidance. So it is helpful as far as directing your practice, but again, it's not a necessity. It can be a helpful tool, however. I'm going to try to go through these pretty quickly because I want to leave. I'm seeing the notifications pop up that a lot of people are having questions. So I want to make sure that I give enough time for that. Is it normal to talk to yourself when you meditate? Again, keyword is allow. If it happens, you're not crazy, you're not weird. This is a normal reaction. I don't think I'm doing the breathing part right. Do you have any tips? 2 things as far as breathing goes. There's going to be practices that deal with calming the mind and being able to use the breath as a tool to do that. So the easiest way to tell if that's the intention of you focusing on your breath, easiest way to tell if you're doing it right is you're calm. But the other way is you're just allowing the breath to be what it is and just accepting it for what it is. If it's coming out of your left nostril, great. Right nostril only, fine. Deep, shallow, whatever it is. Again, equanimity is the yardstick to measure progress. So that's how you know you're doing it right, just accepting the breath as it is. If you're stuffy, it's fine. If you're breathing deeply, that's also fine. Can you meditate with your eyes open? Again, more visual stimuli, more stimuli for you to contend with is not going to be a bad thing. Not necessarily something to start out with, not necessarily you have your eyes open and you're meditating, something maybe you can add on a little bit more as you're more comfortable with sounds and the like, but you can definitely meditate with your eyes open. It can be really helpful. Oh, this is why I wanted to mow through. This is one of my favorite questions. This might be a weird question, but can you live a normal life if you meditate? And I reached out to this person and asked them, what do you mean by can you live a normal life? Other than the fact, are you going to drop out of life and just become a monk? It was really having to do with your emotions. And are you going to be this emotionless robot, this zombie, by meditating that just dulls all the emotions, you eradicate all that? The reason I like this question is because this was day 1 of my retreat. I'm hearing the teacher talk, I'm meditating, and we're talking about eliminating craving and, not necessarily, eliminating craving and not, needing good things to happen. And the only, in a silent retreat, just if you've never been a part, there are like office hours, if you will, with the teachers. That's the only chance that you do have to talk. And I asked him, I'm like, hey, I bought concert tickets for my wife. What's going to happen with that? Am I not going to enjoy the concert? What's the deal with it? And he said, we'll get to it later. And I had this kind of like, we're not in Kansas anymore moment. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm not going to enjoy concerts anymore. I'm not going to enjoy football. I'm not going to enjoy all the things that I used to enjoy. And I just didn't have a breakdown, but I just passed by my car again. And I'm like, oh no, there's no going back to my old life. If anything, meditation allows us to appreciate those things a little bit more. And then I think it was like on day 6, I went back to the same teacher, and it's funny, the Buddha said he achieved enlightenment under a tree. I had a revelation just kind of walking in the courtyard and thinking about music. But I asked the teacher, and I asked him, I think I figured it out, what you mean by it. And this might help you. Meditation, it's like going to that same concert, right? And if you're going to see Billy Joel, you're going to go see Billy Joel in concert. You don't like the song, for example, Just the Way You Are, and he starts playing it in concert, and you're just waiting for Just the Way You Are to finish. It's just like, oh my God, this is so corny. On this end, I just want to hear Piano Man. Meditation doesn't remove your appreciation for your favorite song, Piano Man. It just makes Just the Way You Are a little bit better, and you can appreciate that present moment. So I didn't stop watching football this past year. All it allowed me to do was handle when my team loses a little bit better. And I'm sure my wife is going to have issues with that because there were some games that I was not happy with. But it removes that reactivity part. One more really good question before I turn it over to you. I know I went a little bit over on time, which is unfortunate, but I had a wonderful experience while meditating one time, and as much as I try, it hasn't happened again. What am I doing wrong? Simple word, nothing. You're doing nothing wrong. And again, this is going to go back to what I was saying before. The key word is allowing whatever it is that your mind presents itself at the time. You're going to have amazing moments while meditating. You're going to have difficult moments while meditating. The key word, once again, if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this, is equanimity. And if you start applying that in meditation to sensations in the body, to your breath, to your mind as it is, your thoughts, you are going to get the benefits. Then all of a sudden, when you're faced with a problem in your regular life, you're able to tackle it a little bit more. I think that's yep. So I'm not going to go over the resources because I want to tackle all the questions that were answered. I already see that there's a bunch there. So I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to turn it over. I guess, Annie, you're the facilitator for the questions. Okay, so because there is a lot there.
Yes, there was. Thank you, Armando, for a great presentation. I think I speak for mostly everybody when I say that that really calmed me. That felt honestly kind of like a little mindfulness meditation hour thing. But we had a lot of great comments come in. I'll kind of leave it up to you, Armando, whether or not you want me to read out all of these comments from people or...
These are comments. This is even better, an organic conversation without even trying. You see, I was just like, I want to have them talk, but without even trying, we had an organic conversation kind of happen. I'm just looking through this a little bit, and this is amazing. I'm trying to look and see if there's any questions that I can answer. I don't think I see any. No, I think I think this was just a straight up conversation, which is excellent. One thing I did want to share, in the last few minutes, it's an ongoing. I know I talked to my wife about this. I talked to some of my closest friends about this stuff. I talk about MMA and football and all these things too, but I'm so passionate about meditation that I love talking about these things. If it's something that you're interested in, by all means, many of you have my number, you have my email. I love being able to share different resources. I love learning a lot more about it. If you're interested in, once this whole COVID thing gets out of the way, the place that I went on a retreat for, I know a lot of times, again, from Jersey, we're very skeptical people. We're very, practical. Once I heard about this retreat thing, there's some doubts that creep up. I'm just like, and you look at the website, I'm like, oh no, what is this? And especially when they package it, it's free, there's no, I'm like, what's the catch, right? I mean, I walk through New York City and people are asking me for money. I went in with that mentality and I went away. I'm here. I'm not in some cult. So I can't recommend it enough. It is completely free. There are no strings attached. If you did want to donate, it's fine, but they're not, they're definitely not holding a gun to your head. If you're interested in that for when COVID kind of ceases to be, I can provide those resources. Any sort of podcast, I have a bunch of recommendations, and always interested in hearing more, because it's something, it's as mental health, as aspiring mental health professionals and people that are in the profession, one of my goals going into this was to incorporate a lot of these maybe not so scientific things with the science. I wanted to get that science behind it because I think where the magic happens is being able to take all these lessons and all these like experiential moments that I've had and being able to understand the theory behind it, because that's going to make us better practitioners. That's going to help, so sometimes when I'm talking to a client with the well-being team, and I'm just kind of going off the cuff, and I'm doing things that I want to be able to train a little bit more in the in the theory. So I think it's important. This is what I had to offer. I started kind of, this presentation has gone through so many incarnations. I was telling Chat earlier, just because I've been thinking about it for a while. And, at first I started to do the more sciencey approach and this and that, but meditation helps you be comfortable with who you are. And I realized that that's not who I am at this moment. Maybe it will be in 2 years, 3 years, hopefully. But right now, this is what I had to offer everybody. And we can always further the conversation outside of the presentation. That's an open invitation to everybody. So thank you all for your time.
That's awesome. Thank you, Armando. Before we officially wrap up, I do just want to open up to anybody who is comfortable and would like to, unmute their mic and ask a question or not. So just want to open it up briefly for about 30 seconds or so before we wrap up.
I have a real quick one. First of all, this is exactly what I needed. You answered so many questions. I've been trying to do this for a year, like 5 days a week, and am I doing it right? Thank you for clarifying so many questions I had. There was one type of practice where you said you sort of, I might use the wrong language here, you're sort of evaluating the content that you're noticing in your thoughts. Was it the Vipassana? Mispronounce that?
Vipassana, yeah.
Vipassana. Does that, if evaluation is the correct word, does that happen within the practice or like after the fact? Like, do you just notice what's happening and what you're thinking and what the content of your thoughts are and sensations, and then when you're done, you sort of evaluate it a little bit more, or does that all happen in concert within that practice?
Excellent question. Both. It's gonna be within the moment where you have all these thoughts come up, and you're kind of like, they're gonna be like flashes, right? You're gonna evaluate. You're gonna be in that moment. You're gonna have all these things come up, and then later on, you're gonna be able to reflect on a lot of those moments, on what it signifies. And just the little bit that I know of you, Hunter, I know you're super. You're really insightful, you're really introspective. So you're going to be able to be analytic about it afterwards. I know I'm the same way. So it's just like, you're with that moment, and then afterwards, you're going to have certain sessions that you go back to that are going to kind of like, you're going to be able to analyze it a little bit more and be a little bit more critical. I hope that answers your question. So it's going to be a little bit of both, definitely.
That's super helpful. Thank you a lot, Armando.
Do you do this like every day, or are there days you're just not feeling it?
Definitely days I'm not feeling it. Same with running. I mean, it's a different kind of like, it's not so much because in the West, again, we're always so like, I got to go to the gym. I got to, but it's not so much something to take off your to-do list. Generally every day I'll have at least a little bit. But if some days I miss out because I have a lot of things to do, or, if I'm going to go cross country skiing or whatever it is, or there's a football game, That's totally fine. It's really like, about allowing yourself and being kind to yourself. If you're just kind of just inserting it, just to do something. And I know that's one of the small issues that I have with Headspace, that run streak that they have. Blessing and a curse, like it's just, we pat ourselves on the back. It's just like, oh, I've gone through 200 days, straight days of meditation. Yeah, but how many of those are just, I'm just trying to add to my run streak? So I do it generally, but I definitely don't beat myself up if I have something better to do. If I'm going to be out hiking and I miss meditation, it's better to be out hiking. It's just, it's being able to see when it's applicable, and when it doesn't really fit, that's okay too.
Thank you, everybody, for your questions. We're going to go ahead and wrap up today's presentation. Thank you again so much for being here. This presentation is being recorded and will be published to the U-TTEC Lab website. So if you want to share this with somebody who could not be here today, please feel free to ask them to check out the U-TTEC Lab website, which is u-TTECLAB.com. And yeah, thank you again, everybody, so much for being here.